Also, the tents, the gas canisters, the toilets, everything, the stoves and everything. They carry everything. While you're tired enough just carrying your own humanity. Depression, there are two door posts over in that direction up there.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a tree out there to the right tree. You get these two door posts. The name of the place is Inti Punco, which means the doorway of the sun, and that's the formal entrance to Machu Picchu. When you come to Machu Picchu along the Inca Trail, first time you see Machu Picchu is from up there, and you know that you've made it up here. Then there's a path coming down the mountain. So the whole path coming down the mountain, that's the entrance, the formal entrance to Machu Picchu up here. And you're coming to the town there. Inca was here, opened this road. When he discovered Machu Picchu in 1911, he was only 25 years old.
Excuse me.
He came back here in 1948, he was something like 17. It must have been a great personal reward for him to know that the whole place was open to the public. So let's start coming down. Okay, thanks. Watch it.
This group is going to stay there in our see there's
That's known as the Huayna Picchu Mountain, the Yan Mountain there. On the very top of the mountain, you're going to be able to see some farming terraces. Well, actually, there's retaining walls. There's some terracing. It's just too narrow for agriculture, so they're explained as retaining walls. They used to have a signal station on the very top up here. Well, let's see, it's getting kind of crowded here. Why don't we get up to that terrace here, onto that terrace? And in front of you, that's the Huayna Picchu Mountain, the Yan Mountain there. Actually, there's a path going up to the top of the mountain on the left side, the side that's in the shade right now. If you look at the very top of the mountain, you're going to be able to see some people out there on the very top. It takes them like an hour and a half to get all the way up there. So that's the Yan Mountain on this side, and then on the other side we get the Machu Picchu Mountain. That's the Machu Picchu Mountain in the back out there, the old mountain. The very top of the mountain is lower than the main square in Cusco, just to give you an idea how high we are here and how high Cusco is. So between these two mountains, the Machu Picchu Mountain, the old mountain, and the Huayna Picchu Mountain, the Yan Mountain, you get the whole city of Machu Picchu here. Something like 3.5 square miles, the whole of it. And it's all made out of granite stone. They didn't have to bring the stone from anywhere else. All these mountains are granite. So all they had to do was just reshape the mountain in the shape of their town, just using the granite of the mountain there. When it was first found in 1911, this town is all covered in vegetation. It probably looked like a little bit like that mountain in the distance out there, or like this, all this vegetation down here. As a matter of fact, early in the 1990s, they did some infrared photography out there, and they found out that right in front of Machu Picchu there's another Inca settlement. Under all the vegetation there's another one right here that you can see it. So right now, we believe that probably this was the capital city of all the Inca settlements around this area. Along the Inca Trail, you got something like 5 settlements. Then in front of Machu Picchu there's another one. And probably we believe that beyond Machu Picchu there must be some other settlements. So this was probably the administrative center of all these Inca settlements around the area, something built by the state to tell the people that the state was here to protect them, to control them, and probably to collect taxes from them. So this is not believed to be the Shangri-La of the Andes anymore. It was very well populated and in control all the settlements around the area. As a matter of fact, they say that probably as to the extent of the town and as to the water supply that they had here, probably the population in Machu Picchu must have varied between 1,000 and 2,000 people lived up here. There are two sides to Machu Picchu. Over to that side, you get some like 216 buildings among temples, palaces, workshops, and so on. And that's known as the urban sector, that side of Machu Picchu. And just by the way, the first building that Bingham saw when he came up here for the first time was that round tower in front of us. Right there. That shows that unsurpassed Inca stone masonry with stones cut in regular courses and very well fitted together. It must have been sticking in the middle of all the vegetation that covered the whole of the place, but since it's one of the buildings that shows that kind of typical stone masonry, just because of that, Bingham thought and believed that he had discovered the last capital of the Incas. Then you can see all the houses out there. First of all, the houses here have thatch roofs, but they decided not to restore all the thatch roofs because since the houses are so close together, you wouldn't be able to see any of the town anymore. In spite of that, there are some houses that have been restored as to their thatch roof, like the house behind that round tower. That's a thatch roof, and around here we're going to be able to see some of the houses with thatch roofs. They have to replace the thatch roof every year and a half. Machu Picchu is still standing up to a 70% the way it was found in 1911. We've done some like 25% restoration of the place, and we keep on restoring the place, but still most of it was still standing the way it was found in 1911. Like down here, you get all these buildings that need to be restored, and little by little, they are restoring them. And of course, some more cleaning to be done and cutting to be done. Like here underneath all that vegetation, there are lots of terraces or just Inca walls of buildings that they had on this side. As a matter of fact, it took Bingham and his crew for some like 3 years to clear this out of jungle growth. But still, I mean, when you keep on cutting the grass, because if you leave it alone, in a matter of 6 months, the vegetation covers the whole thing again. What we're going to do now is we're going to go all the way up to the top where that hut is, so you can take the typical and traditional picture of Machu Picchu. And as we're climbing up, I'll be telling you something.
Teams of skilled people, or do they have somebody that kind of organises it and then people tie the wood?
No, actually, I mean, like, for one thing, they got an archaeologist that lives in the place, and he's the one that
Yeah.
supervises everything. And then, of course, I mean, you got all these workers
Yeah.
that are told exactly what they have to do.
Yeah.
Right? That's why they don't want to call it reconstruction; they want to call it restoration.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes them a while. Yeah. Because every once in a while, you get some unskilled ones like this. Yeah. But they're just
Very careful
carrying
to
all these wooden poles out there for the scaffolding. Even up there, if you look at the Huayna Picture Mountain up there, just to one side to the left and the top, then you're going to be able to some scaffolding out there. They're restoring it, right? Part of it. At the time, was some like 2,800 feet long. I would bring water all the way from the Machu Picchu mountain side to the town. At present, actually, they used to have two mountain springs, and one of the springs still gives water, and that's the water that the hotel uses. It comes all the way from the mountain and just goes all in town. The whole length of the water canal was totally open, so they could maintain it immediately anytime. You know, there's one thing by which this town is still standing on top of this mountain, in spite of the 44 inches of rain that you get here, especially during January, February, and March. And it's the drainage systems that they have here. The Incas took great care of the drainage systems in the whole of Machu Picchu, and that's why this town is still standing up here on top of this mountain, in spite of that rain. In the case of the water supply, I mean, it was totally open, the canal, so they could maintain it all the time. Well, like here, there's the natural fault right here, but it was used as a great and a huge drain. The overflow of all the water that was used to irrigate all these terraces would just end up here and then all the way down to the river out there without disturbing any of the buildings nearby. Well, in the case of this water canal before getting into town would just come under this rock and over this huge drain. So if there was an overflow, they would just go into the drain, and only the right amount of water would go into the town, and no danger of flooding. So far, we've been able to spot some like 200 drains all over the town, and there must be some other drains that are constantly draining the town. and especially because the whole of Machu Picchu is artificially terraced, they had to take a break. This last Inca, the leader of the revolution, decided to leave Ollantaytambo, and he went down into the Amazonic jungles, and he founded the last capital of the Incas in the middle of the Vilcabamba Mountains. All of these mountains here are known as the Vilcabamba Mountains. That's the specific name in the area. And as to the early Spanish writers, somewhere in these mountains, Manco Inca founded a last stronghold of the Incas, where he and his three sons maintained a precarious rule for some like 40 years until 1572 or so, when the Spanish got to that place, took the last Inca emperor out there. His name was Tupac Amaru I. He was taken to Cusco, this Tupac Amaru. He was executed, and that was it. Nobody wanted to know about this last capital of the Incas anymore. Until 1909, when we have this American explorer, Hiram Bingham. He comes down here studying the military campaigns of one of our liberators, Simon Bolivar, and also studying the colonial trade routes. He comes down here, he becomes interested in this last capital of the Incas, but 2 years later he returns with the purpose to look for this last stronghold of the Incas. At first he would follow the route described by the early Spanish writers, and following that route he gets to a place 100 miles west of Machu Picchu, a place known at present as Espiritu Pampa, the plain of the spirits. He gets out there, he finds some Inca archaeological remains, but it seems that what he saw and what he found didn't fulfill his expectations. And especially because his porters feared attack from jungle tribes, he decides that that's not the place, so he leaves the place, he returns to Cusco, and starts looking for this last capital of the Incas again, but in this instance following the river. And as he had been doing all along, when he got to the foot of this mountain here, he asked the farmers down there if they knew about some Inca archaeological site in the area, and of course the farmers pointed to the top of this mountain and told him that there was something up here. So on 24th of July 1911, these farmers guided Bingham up to the top of this mountain. By noon he was up here, he saw that round tower, and he decided that this was the last capital. It's the same idea all over the world. On flat areas like on the Peruvian coast or like in Egypt, they wanted to reach the sky and they build the pyramids. But here we have the pyramids, so all we have to do is just build something on top of the pyramid and make it ours. And of course that brings up the question about the big question: what was the purpose of this tower? We don't really know, even though there are different suggestions. It's been suggested that probably Machu Picchu could have been sort of like a trading outpost. You see, there are lots of things that the Incas used in the Andes Mountains that come from the jungle area. It started with coca leaves. Coca leaves came from the jungle area. Would have needed something like this, something like a trading outpost, something that could get them closer to the jungle area. On the other hand, they say that Machu Picchu could have been something like the end of a line of defense to protect the city of Cusco against jungle tribes incursions like Ollantaytambo. See, the Incas never conquered the jungle area. They conquered most of South America, but they never messed around with the jungle area. They believed that the jungle area was just too hot, too humid, too enervating for them as highlanders. As a matter of fact, some of the early Spanish writers say that when the Incas wanted to punish their people, they would just send them to the coca plantations in the lowlands. You know how they regarded the jungle area. But on the other hand, they feared attack from these jungle tribes, especially because they had this lethal weapon, the poison-tipped arrow. And fighting a war against the jungle area people, it would be something like a guerrilla war, and the Incas were not good at it. But they wanted to protect the capital city from these incursions. And even though Cusco is something like 2 miles high in the Andes Mountains, as you've seen, following that river is very easy to get to Cusco. So it said that probably they decided to build this line of defense with all these fortresses by the river. Machu Picchu by the Urubamba River, Ollantaytambo by the same river, Pisac by the same river, and finally near Cusco the fortress of Sacsayhuamán. There's some documents written by the Augustinian priests that have some lands in this area, and these papers and documents state that not just Machu Picchu but the whole of the area was the private property of the 9th emperor of the Inca dynasty. It was the private property of Pachacutec, the 9th emperor of the Inca dynasty. dynasty, the one that started the Inca Empire. So he suggests that probably at a certain age, probably when Pachacute was something like 40 years old, he decided to retire, and he chose this place to have some like a royal estate here. So they believe that the whole Machu Picchu was some of his royal estate. But of course, since the Incas didn't believe that much in private property, it could have been that this was Pachacute's royal estate, but at the same time, this town could have served those other political, administrative purposes we've been talking about, like being a trading post or being a military. All the Inca towns, this town is also divided into halves. All the Inca towns were divided also into halves, always into halves, because contrary to what the Spanish believed, the Incas didn't have a monarchy. They had always had a diarchy, two emperors at the same time. It's just that one of the emperors was more important, more predominant than the other here. So you got the round tower. The round tower is explained as a naked eye astronomical observatory. The place in Machu Picchu where they could tell the time of the winter solstice. Then back here you get all these houses, probably living quarters. That's about the right size of a living quarter of Machu Picchu, meant to hold some like 4 or 5 people. Then all the way up here, you got two big buildings that just too big to use as living quarters, at least because they're probably become like workshops. Then still on the upper part of Machu Picchu, at the farthest end, you got this step pyramid. And there's some steps going up to the top also. On the very top there's a rock, there's an altar that's known as the Intihuatana stone in Machu Picchu, the sundial stone in Machu Picchu. Then you come down, mark the entrance to the Huayna Picchu. You go through those two houses, then you continue in that direction to the right, you can see some steps there. Then you come down again, there's a narrow ridge that connects the two mountains, and you start going up to the Huayna Picchu. Then on the lower part of Machu Picchu, in the middle part of it, you got this complex of buildings known as the House of the Chosen Women of the Sun in Machu Picchu. It's just a name, just because this complex of buildings have got a type of architecture similar to the House of the Chosen Women of the Sun in Cusco. And then down here, you got some of the complexes, and one of them, the one that stood upright of that tree, is known as the temple dedicated to the Condor, just because there is a sculpture of a condor in stone on the ground.
Replace that with a north, that was north east to the east. Is that how it is now?
Nobody takes a picture down now.
This is the Machu Picchu peak. Right up here. Look at this fascinating view.
So here we are. Do you have any messages in French to say?
En français, je dirais, nous sommes enfin arrivés à Machu Picchu, qui est absolument merveilleux, il fait très très beau. On pensait qu'il y aurait de la pluie, mais il n'y en a pas. Et cette vue est prise d'une des collines de Machu Picchu. On voit le fameux pic, et en fait, il y a un chemin qui monte tout en haut du pic et qui redescend. Ce que nous ne ferons pas.
A lot of steps to walk down again now.
Ah,
Well, he's not running away, he's looking a bit pissed off.
No, no. For the sun to dry, yeah. And then buried it on the mountain. Three walls right here. Somehow, I mean, the house in Mississippi has got the fourth wall missing or it's very low, and we don't understand why. Could be because here is quite a pretty hard like flooring, so you need some quick shelter out there. But because of that, in most of the houses in Machu Picchu, the doorposts are always notched, so they could have a wooden beam from one side to the other that supports the thatch roof on that open side of the house. Again, for the keepers of the bodies that were being dried on top of this rock to be buried on the mountain. And they say that lots of people came on pilgrimage to this place, and before being allowed, probably had to stay overnight in that huge hall. That huge hall there, then like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 doorways. It's a place of refuge that's quite common in all these Inca sites. Yeah, it's meant to give shelter to a lot of people at one time, and I suppose that probably the people coming from Cusco first they have to stay overnight there, and they see, that's one of the biggest attractions in China.
Still feeling fit? No, no altitude sickness?
not so far.
I don't know.
This is not the Machu Picchu mountain. It's called...
She doesn't know now, does she?
No,
A Wino or something like that.
Wino.
Yes.
Must find...
The lintel, huge lintel, actually
And one big stone above it,
actually two of them. Oh well, yeah, one
sticking out.
yeah. And they have some wooden trunks from one side to the other as the floor of the upper level. Yeah, you can see a little bit more of the lower part of Machu Picchu there. And even though the whole Machu Picchu is a huge quarry with its own granite stone, There's some spots in Machu Picchu that are known as the quarries of Machu Picchu, like here. All these rocks out here actually look like a quarry, and it seems that they did some quarrying here. So this is known as the quarries of Machu Picchu. To crack the stones, the Incas used a very simple technique, relatively speaking, of course. Like the Egyptians, they would just drill some holes along the surface of a rock. In most instances, following a natural cleavage, then they would insert some wooden pegs, wet the pegs, and they would expand and crack the rock. And then they would help the rock by using some bronze or wooden crowbars, not forgetting to drop some pebbles in the middle of the crack so the rock wouldn't close it. It's rock here. So that's the way they cracked the rocks. And then after the rock was cracked, then you had your piece until you had all the rest of your life to work. You see the door posts notched. Those context to the sides for the thatch, to secure the thatches. And you can always notice that the gables, those triangle gables, are stiffly pitched and almost pyramidal because of the kind of rain that we have here.
No, no.
Por ahí a la estación, donde está la... ¿Dónde hemos dejado eso?
¿Quieres dejarlo?
Sí.
Hacia abajo.
Oh, okay.
You can guarantee the ones coming out there. We're jinxing cameras.
Por aquí a la derecha.
Hacia abajo. Y de ahí a la derecha. This way over here. Look at all the farming terraces out there. Yeah. That play of shadows. All the corners to this side. If you come and get close to that balcony, look over it, you're going to be able to see the inside of that round tower. The round tower is explained as a naked eye astronomical observatory. You look at the inside of that rock, the inside of that tower, then you find a rock there. And also the tower has got some like two windows. One of the windows, the one that's in front of us, faces the rising point of the sun during the winter solstice, and the window to the right faces the rise of the Pleiades constellation of that segment of the sky out there to your right.
But one is sacrificed.
No, as far as we know, no. But of course, I mean, the Incas had mainly domestic animal sacrifices, and especially in Cusco, they had some human sacrifices. Even though the Incas didn't believe that much in human sacrifice. You know, a human sacrifice, though, was the most beautiful offering that the Incas could give to the gods, and thus it was done seldom. On the very special occasions, on the very ominous occasions, like the installation of a new emperor, departure for war, plague, a drought, or the like, then they would sacrifice a human being. Most of the time it was just domestic animals, and the ones that were sacrificed all the time were the young animals. But it could have been the winter solstice, which for us is in the middle of June, and it's the time the sun festival, or the beginning of the year could have been the summer solstice for us in the middle of December. Ever since then, the Incas went into the solar calendar. Also, on the western side, on the eastern side of Machu Picchu, on that eastern mountain side, there's another stone arrangement similar to this one over here, And it seems that that was the place in Machu Picchu where they could tell the time of the summer solstice. So they knew about that. I mean, like, they didn't know as much about archaeology or astronomy as far as we know, as with the Aztecs or the Mexicans, which were the best in the Americas. But just by watching the sky, they have to have they had all this basic knowledge of astronomy. There's the water all along this terrace over here, and then the water ends up in this first water pool. Cylinder right there. And then from this pool, the water comes underground to the second pool right here. And then it goes to the third pool and the fourth pool, and you got 16 pools over here. A series of 16 pools, and the water just enters and escapes each one of these pools through some water canals. So this was the place in Machu Picchu where they worshiped the water out here. And just nearby, you got this structure, this sun temple. Well, this was the place where they could tell the time, the winter solstice, but then since astronomy and religion were very close together in ancient times, this is also known as the sun temple. That's the temple. The wall that goes to the temple ends, then the stone masonry gets to be a little more difficult, but that elaborate.
Probablemente ese inca llegó a tener más de 400 esposas y 1200 hijos en todo el imperio. Pero la más importante era la que habitaba en este lugar, por su nombre la Coya o Yusti en aquella época. Todos recuerden al Inca Pachacute como el constructor de Machu Picchu. ¿Y eso qué siglo fue? Eso fue a final del siglo XIV y a final del siglo
Me acordé en qué momento. Lo puedo tener, no hay problema.
Yeah, this. Okay, you can see the other side of that rock there. They used that rock, and on top of it they built the temple, the sun temple. And then you see those things sticking out from the four corners of that window, just probably placing that sighting device. But then underneath you get this beautiful structure. You can closer here, you're going to be able to see it some more. Once again, like in Ollantaytambo, you get that step-like carving there. Actually, two sets of the step-like carvings. And then in the back out there, you get something like an altar and a step pyramid out there.
Are these white lines on the rock?
It's for the restoration.
Right.
They wanted to restore the place. That's what they usually do. They line the stones, they numbered them, And that's what they wanted to do here, but then afterwards they found out that it was kind of hard, and they decided to just leave it like that. Here you can see how they just built all around, following the shape of the rocks there. They didn't bother to move the rocks, it just built around like that. When Bingham came over here, he looked at it and he thought that this was the burial site of an emperor, and they call it the Royal Mausoleum. But then afterwards we couldn't find any mummies here, and we believe that probably this was an altar, especially because that's that altar in the back out there. That's quite similar to the sundial stone. As we go, look all the water just from one, going from one pool to the next. Let's come up here. There you can see the Sun Temple from the other side. So you get Sun Temple on the other side. I get the pools all over the place. And who knows, probably this was the place where they worship the water. People would just get together here, and they would do all the worshiping of the water in the area. And then after they have worshipped the water here, probably anybody who just comes to any of the pools and just fill up their vessels and use the water for practical purposes. But then once again, the stone masonry is telling you that this area was a special area, like something out there. Or like even in this case, in the case of this house, the stones were fitted together. You can see the inside of this pool over here. That's the most elaborate one. So that's the pool where they worship the water. That's the third one. The first pool, you see the first one, the second one, that's the third one. And then the water just goes to the last 16. All the houses in Machu Picchu, this is the more elaborate one. And they suppose that this house belonged to the leader of Machu Picchu, the High Emperor, or the High Priestess, or the High Priest here. It's the most elaborate. It's a courtyard in the center, and then all around the courtyard you get all these rooms. You got one room over to that side, even though it doesn't look like a room, but actually it's, you got 3 walls right there, and you get the gables, and probably there was attachment right there. And you can also see that the doorposts are notched. So one room there, there's another room, so there used to be another room here, the same height here. Okay? And of course, I mean like a bigger room, like here, on your right, and another one over here. That's quite interesting. And also in the case of this house, it's got access to some kind of a garden on the other side. And here some grinding stones for just grinding their crops. This house always got some drainage system, like here there's a drainage canal. You can see the drainage canal right here. And it's quite a fact they say that probably this town is right here. That's what it's invisible. But the guy must have lived in this room over here because this is the most elaborate one. It's even got something like a toilet. Here you got that's the room itself. It's a very nice room. We're talking about the 1500s, and like it was the Middle Ages in Europe. And if you compare this house to a farmer's house in Europe at about the same period, it was a comfortable way. This house had a partition wall over to this side, and then next you got some, again a dead end right there. There was probably a toilet right there, so not so much. A private one here. The only kind of floor that they had was just dirt, like here, and even the Inca emperor or whatever the special person had to just sleep on the ground. They just slept on the ground in the daily clothes, on mats, on hides out there, and there was no furniture in their houses, no tables, no chairs. Everything was on the ground or in the niches out there that we use as a light shrines. This is what we call a cancha. A cancha is an open space encircled by a perimeter wall that goes all around it, and you get the houses built against that outer wall. That's a cancha. So this was a cancha. This house, the total house was a cancha. And when you come into a cancha, it's you notice that the rooms are never communicated. To go from one room to the next one, if you want to go from here to the other room, you have to go through an open space with the other one. There are not communication between rooms, and that's something that we don't understand, because here in Machu Picchu most of the time probably was raining, and if you want to go from one room to the next one, you would just probably get wet. But somehow, I mean, they just don't care about that, and they never develop this idea of communication.
Sorry.
Can we all come?
Probably better than
Filter through these war games to train the young people into warfare, and that's about it, right? Apart from that, of course, they had dance, they had pastoral dances, they had native dances, they had agricultural dances, and so on, but that was about it. The only kind of game that they say adult people played is gambling. Like in all societies, adult people always gamble, and it seems that the Incas played dice. So that was the only kind of game. Apart from that, nothing.
What would they gamble for? If they didn't have money in their system.
Well, probably for crops or for some piece of pottery on there, right? But who knows? I mean, like a guinea pig. Here. I mean, like the history of here, in the middle of that plaza doesn't have any significance in the special. I mean, when Machu Picchu was discovered in 1911, it was covered all over with vegetation and trees all over the area. And then when they cleaned this place, they just decided to leave some trees like this one. But in 1995, they did some excavations close to that tree, and for the first time in Machu Picchu, they were able to find some golden bracelets. You know, Bingham is the only one that did all the excavations here. And he took some like 40 cases full of the stuff from Machu Picchu all the way to the States, to the University of Yale, something that the Peruvian government is trying to get back. But he doesn't report, Bingham doesn't report any gold or silver findings, which is kind of strange. And of course, that's how it's been explained that probably the people in Machu Picchu deserted this place. They say that at one point, the people in Machu Picchu felt that the Spanish were going to the other town, the Espiritu Santo town, and they didn't feel that safe here, so they decided to desert this place and mix with the jungle tribes and just took all of their valuable things with them. That's how it's explained that Bingham couldn't find any gold or silver here. But then on the other hand, it could have been that he didn't report everything. Look at the other side of the mountain again.
Yeah, I got more shots than I wanted.
there's the mountain again. And then out there in the distance you can see the water pipes from the hydroelectric station there. So at the bottom you get the turbines. And if you look at the right side of those pipes there, you're going to be able to see that half the mountain fell down. And that's actually the landslide and rock slide that covered the whole of that station. Here, this plaza is known as the Sacred Plaza. It's just a name. But if you look at the buildings here, the three buildings that you get here, and you compare this building in the back with these two buildings here, then you can see that they were used for a different purpose. And as a matter of fact, they're explained as temples. This one is known as the temple, the principal temple in Machu Picchu, and the other one is known as the Temple of the Three Windows. These buildings kind of epitomize Inca architecture. You got that inward inclination, you got cyclopean type of work, semi-cyclopean type of work. The stones cut in regular courses, very well fitted together, the trapezoidal niches, and so on. It's all Inca architecture in just two buildings here. And you can also see that the houses for the gods were attached in the same way as the houses for the common people. The doorposts are notched right here, but that wouldn't be to support the roof from the open side of the house. So like here, if you look at the like, they have to place a pillar in the center or two beams to meet right here. And then once again, those knobs. That big question about Inca architecture. You got those big stones out there, they're well fitted together, nicely done, but in spite of that, you got those knobs sticking out. Why, what for, we don't understand. There's a big question about it. Because of those two windows, and because in the Quechua language, the word toko can be translated as window and orifice, Bingham once suggested that Machu Picchu was the place of origin of the Inca. So the ground is settling down, that wall is settling down, and it's carrying with it part of that wall out there. So that's not an earthquake, that's just the wall settling down here. And then over here, we got this stone. Of course, there's no archaeological proof as what I'm going to tell you, but they found out that if you get a compass here, the vertical axis just points the south-north axis, and the horizontal line just marks the west-east axis. And to some extent, it looks like the Southern Cross. The Southern Cross, you got something like 5 stars, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and something in between there's another star. And they believe that the Incas wanted to represent the Southern Cross in this stone. We are not that totally sure about that, and there's no archaeological proof to it. But the truth is that the Incas knew about the Southern Cross, and they had some like 40 names for constellations. They knew about the Southern Cross, they knew about just using the star as an axis of work. And always, everywhere you go, you always find these knobs. Always the knobs are there. In the majority of the cases, these knobs come in pairs, and some anthropologists have suggested that probably it was an offering to Mother Earth, thus representing the bust of a woman. But who knows, maybe it was thought overnight.
Cool.
From here you can see the south, look at the formal entrance to Machu Picchu. The Sun Gate out there, the path that leads you up to the entrance to Machu Picchu, the upper part. Then the Machu Picchu mountain itself out there. Then you can see the western horizon, the whole of it from that side. And then from here you can see the northern part of Machu Picchu, the Huayna Picchu mountain, the lower eastern side of Machu Picchu out there, the Putupusi mountain, and all around the whole of the town. From here you can just control the whole of the town here. And probably that's why they decided to build their altar dedicated to the upper world here. See that stone there? That's known as the Intihuatana stone. Translated would be something like the hitching post of the sun. And even though it was, it's explained as sundial, right now we don't know that it was not a sundial. It was probably the altar dedicated to the upper world. Let's get closer to it and see some more of it. You look at all the walls all around here. It seems that the walls were high enough for the sun not to hit the stone. Or like those walls out there, they looked like walls that surrounded half this place, and probably this was not meant to be hit by the sun. So don't believe that this was sundial anymore. And on top of that, if you place a compass on that corner out there, it's going to point exactly to the magnetic north. But of course, 500 years ago, the magnetic north was not there. So that's one proof that it was not used for any accurate astronomical or astrological purposes. But then on the other hand, if you stand on this side and you look at the mountain, it kind of mimics the shape of the mountain in the back. And that's why they believe that probably this was an altar dedicated to the upper world, especially because one way of getting to the upper world was just through the mountain tops. Or who knows, maybe this was the place where from they worshipped that mountain. This stone also is in the middle of these two axes, the north-south axis here and the east-west axis. And in the middle of these two axes, you get this stone here. When you get to the top of the Huayna Picchu mountain, you find this carving, something like an arrowhead right there, and the two of them just mark the northwest axis. And in the middle of it, you get this one. And then on top of that mountain, there's a carving similar to this one on top of that mountain that marks the western horizon, and then to the other side you get the Veronica mountain that marks the eastern horizon, and in the middle of it you get this stone.
Ah,
Sobre todo lo que viene acá, que te van a todo está viniendo de Arequipa, ¿no?
The next time we have time, you'll have to do that.
we're not doing it before lunch.
No, we're not doing it before lunch. See one more spot. Then I'll give you some time for you to explore on your own.
Sorry, I thought you were filming. There's a step
Yeah,
off the
no,
end.
I
So imagine living in a place like this. Good temperature, lots of water, food, girls. Or boys, right? That's the pyramid out here. Right in front of it is the old come over to this side. Right here. The whole of this area is known as the temple dedicated to the condor at present. And it's because of this sculpture on the ground. This stone here. And you're supposed to be looking at the condor lying on a wing. And you get the head, the eyes, the beak, and the ruff around its neck, right, and its neck there. And of course, in front of it, there's some kind of a reservoir for some offerings to Mother Earth right there. When they reconstructed this house over here, they found out that then on the ground floor, they raised an unusual number of guinea pigs. And they suppose that probably all the guinea pigs raised there just ended up on the top of this rock as an offering to the condor. Some people want to see the condor with the wings open. You might look at the head of the condor and then just look at the rocks at the side. Yes, it looks like the wings opening out there. Maybe we'll meet some coca leaves there. Already. The condor has always been depicted in the Andes Mountains. From 3,000 years before Christ, you find condors depicted in caves, in textiles, in pottery and everything. Just because a condor flies so high, so you can get up to 15, 16,000 feet high, and then you can fly for something like 100 miles in a day looking for food. It has always been worshipped, and it was always considered the messenger of the gods, and that's why probably it represented the upper world. So in a place like here, probably it's appropriate just to have a place where they worship the condor. Even though, in spite of that, sometimes when you came into this area, you would explain the whole this area as the place of prisons, because they hadn't excavated this out, and they had those windows out there, those niches with the holes to the sides that would explain as something like a place where they torture people. Then afterwards, they found out about this sculpture, and on top of that, they found out about that cave that probably was a place of origin. I'm telling you about this legend that says that the first Inca people emerged from three holes on the mountainside. And of course it was the case with most Inca or Andean peoples. They always emerged from holes or caves. And probably this must have been one of the caves, and that's why they worked on the sides of it as a way of making it special. But anyway, after the present, they hold this place known as the temple dedicated to Krishna. If you want to see a little bit more of that cave, you can open it.
Moet het toestel naar zo?
Ja, dat is oké, ja. Maar niet zo uitgebreid.
Misschien moet je raden nou. Ik ben jou aan het geloven van
How do I play it?
So what final thoughts do you have on Machu Picchu? You are speechless.
I'm very, very pleased I came. I wish I had a little bit more time. It's obviously a very tiring visit, and I wish I had a lot more time to relax and to wander around. I suppose we'll come back.
There's the bus station. You have to go all the way down this zigzag road to the town at the bottom. Then you can see the trains. Station.
Claro, es que siempre, ¿no?
Normally I reserve the enter the moment. We'll stop that.
That's a week from now.
It's gotta be a week.
Can't remember that was second shot before.
I get a home train
I
then
know.
we'll go see.
That's the problem. There he is.
Is that a boy?
School's out.
Places that the normal tourist stuff goes. We've got a guy that's taking us to places.
It's like Spain and Italy have the type of tourists.
Yes, sir. All the time.
Most tourists in Peru than Americans. And Japanese, Japanese people.
I've seen a lot of
And this is the room we are in a hotel called El Dorado in the center of town. And we don't like it, so we asked them to change. So tomorrow night, we should be in another room because we got 3 nights in Cusco.
Well, actually, it's a very pretty room. The problem is there's no windows at all. There's a sauna here, supposedly, also with no windows. No need to duck, there's nothing there. There's a nice long corridor. A passageway that leads into the, the light is in here, leads into the sauna. I don't know whether I can do that. Yes. There's the sauna in there. Probably can't see a thing. And then finally, at the end there's the bathroom. So.
You got this Banco de Credit over here on your right. That's the largest bank in Peru, the biggest bank in Peru. And you get all of these places where you can have your films developed in something like an hour, half an hour. Of course, I mean, all over town you're going to notice that there are lots of internet outlets. So if you want to check your email, they usually charge something like from 2 to 3 sols per hour. Oops. This is the main square over here, known as Plaza de Armas at present. This is the heart of Cusco. It was the heart of Cusco in ancient times, and it's the heart of Cusco at present. Here on your right, you got the Jesuit church right here. And then up there you got the cathedral. On your right up there, on that corner, on the first floor, you got this Irish pub. Harry Flaherty's out there. Next to it, you got the cathedral. Here also on your right, on the corner, there's a good cafe. It's called Aidu, so you're going to have hot chocolate, coffee, good coffee, that's the place. You can always go up to the first floor. There's Baghdad Cafe out there. I don't know what's going on here. Then over here you got a vegetarian restaurant on this side. Then here a small doorway, Estancia Imperial. Up these stairs is a chicken place. Down here you got this Inca Grill, La Retama up there, good restaurants. Or here on the corner, the Roma restaurant. Here on the corner also, on the first floor, you got a steakhouse. You got the Kroskis right here. And of course, under the colonnades, you got all these shops where you can buy CDs, cassettes, books in English, videos, right? And you can always try them before buying them. Even CDs, they'll play the CD for you right there. Right. Your hotel is just from here down, I mean, like a block and a half. This is the university here, close to the Jesuit church. You get the university. That's the law branch. That's just one branch because the main campus is to the south, so like 10 minutes to the south of Cusco. In Inca times, of course, all around this plaza, the Inca emperors had their palaces, and thus the cathedral, for instance, has been built on top of what used to be the palace of the 8th emperor of the Inca dynasty, Viracocha. Right on top of it, they built the cathedral. It took them something like 100 years to build this church. And when you look at the church from the outside, it's kind of a square, because by 1650 it was almost finished. But then in 1650 we had an earthquake, and the next body that was going to add to it, well, they decided not to do it because of the earthquake, and they just left it as square as it is. Especially if you compare the cathedral with the Jesuit church. The Jesuit church is kind of a slimmer out there, right? And all of it in the central part of Cusco. You got all these Inca foundation stones all over the place. It's a little bit like Ollantaytambo. Here on your left also you got a restaurant, Pucara, right here. It's a cozy little restaurant there. Lots of travel agencies here. You want to do some rafting or you want to go some horseback riding tomorrow, then this is the place to come. Right on top of the Inca walls they built the church and the monastery of Santa Teresa right here. That's usually the case in Cusco. And most of the streets, of course, still preserve their original Quechua names. Like the name of this street, still it's Sapi. Sapi is a Quechua word that means root, so it's the street of the root. Even though this is best known as the street of the conquest. Because when the Spanish came to Cusco, they entered Cusco for the first time through this street. It was the 15th of November in 1533 they entered Cusco for the first time. They had come to the heights of Cusco, they saw the whole of the valley, came down, and all the way to the main square. And of course, the first time they were here, they were welcome as gods. And the whole of the empire was open to them. Mountains never built fortifications around their towns. Instead of that, since you had so many mountains around, they would fortify the top of a hill like here. And whenever their towns were in danger, they would always move to the top of the hill to protect themselves, take refuge in these places, and then defend themselves upward. And that's probably what the Incas did. The Incas, before the 1400s, were just one of a multitude of tribes that lived down in the valley. And probably, as it was all over the world, warfare was kind of endemic. So they were always just fighting among themselves. And whenever they felt in danger, they would just come to the top of this hill and protect themselves from up here. But then around 1438, we had the Incas in this valley emerging as an empire, and then up north, some like 5 hours by car at present, from Cusco to the north, we had another tribe, the Chancas, emerging as an empire. And of course, I mean, the two of them eventually had to confront each other to decide which one was going to remain in all of these lands, of the lords of all these lands. The Chancas came all the way to Cusco, attacked the Cusqueñans, but fortunately for us, we were able to defeat the Chancas, and then afterwards we conquered them. And then all the tribes that the Chancas had already subjugated around their town immediately came under the rule of the Incas. And overnight, because of this battle, the Inca Empire extended from Cusco to 5 hours to the north, and lots of tribes became overnight under the rule of the Incas. The Incas felt so powerful that they decided to keep on conquering all the other tribes, and that's how the Inca Empire started. And they never stopped until the Spanish arrived and then conquered them. So that's how the Inca Empire started. But then the ninth emperor of the Inca dynasty then decided that it would be a good idea to fortify the top of this hill in case any other tribe dared to attack the Inca Empire and the city of Cusco. And then the construction of Sacsayhuaman started. Look at the size of the stones, huge stones here. Of course, you're looking at the smaller ones. We're going to be able to see some other stones there around the corner that have got an estimated weight of 100 to 150 metric tons. This is limestone, and the quarries are some like 10 miles to the south. So all of these stones were pulled up here by sheer brute force, and they used fiber ropes of any desirable strength out there. Once again, the people that work here were probably tributary Indians. Indians paying tribute, paying their taxes to the... This place had been built that way for strategic purposes. And as a matter of fact, that's the reason why they baptized this as the Fortress of Sacsayhuaman. The reason that they had done it in that shape because each one wall could be defended from two circles in South America, to some extent represented the cosmic world on the ground. And in the case of the Incas, it seems that they did the same. They say that Cusco has got the shape of a puma, And in that case, this is the head of the puma. Otherwise, this is just a representation of lightning. It's also said that Machu Picchu has got the shape of a condor, or Ollantaytambo has got the shape of a llama out there. Who knows if it's true or not? But here it seems that this was just the physical representation of lightning here. Seeing to Cusco from up here, some like 50,000 Indians, it said, that laid siege to Cusco just to kill those 180 Spanish, but we weren't successful. And it's because in town, in Cusco, there was some like 20,000 Indians from Ecuador, and there were some other thousands of Indians from other tribes, and these tribes sided the Spanish against the Incas. So it was not just the Incas against the Spanish, it was the Incas against the Spanish and all the native cultures. Yeah, that's right. So the feel of lances, the feel of spears, and in the month of December, coinciding with the summer solstice in the middle of December, all the young boys all over the empire had their initiation ceremonies. Of course, here, only the young boys that belong to the ruling class in Cusco. They had to go through a survival test. They had to run for something like 3 days from one of the Inca sacred mountains to the south all the way up here. And when they got here, even if they did it in more than 3 days, if they were not that fit, they were given a breechcloth, a waras we call it, as a sign of their manhood. And also their children names were changed to adult names. Their earlobes were pierced, and they were given these huge earplugs, a sign of their caste. And also they were given a headband, another sign of their caste. And they were eligible as soldiers after that. And of course, all these kids eventually ended up on the borders of the Inca Empire fighting all of the Inca wars, because the military service was an unavoidable stage in the development of the masculinity of boys. Only after military service you were allowed to get married. It seems that the Inca state realized that it was a hard-hand totalitarian state on the individual, and especially because mobility was restricted, then all of these kids were given the chance to waste their energy, their aggressiveness, just by being sent to the borders of the Inca Empire and fight all of them. By the stones, I mean, you can see how big they are. I suppose you got some like several stone hinges here. So the same idea, that inward inclination to all of the walls, and most of the walls have got all these drainage canals, like here, and like water there, the drain right there. They've done some crude restoration, as you can see, and they've done that on purpose, so by contrast you can see which are the genuine stones and which are not. Just the bigger stones are falling down, so they're just trying to protect them. Sometimes the fitting is so perfect that you don't know which one is stone. These two stones. Here, look at the cornerstone up here. It looks like two stones, but it's actually one stone. And they carve a line in the middle of it, and it looks like two stones out there. But of course, I mean, since the fitting is so perfect, you don't realize. We realize about that because to accommodate, to some extent, the original shape of this stone. Even though accommodating the different irregular shapes must have been some kind of a challenge there.
They just don't do irregular, do they? Would stand up better.
Probably that's one of the reasons why they did it like that. I mean, they got all these, what do you call, force vectors, But one thing that you got to notice as the Inca architecture that you see everywhere is that the corner stones are all just one stone is large, like here, which is different from our constructions at present. Usually the corner is the weakest point because you get the two walls meeting here. That's the Incas always. The cornerstones is just one big piece. landscape looked like. What we've seen in from the bus yesterday afternoon, nothing was flat and no trees at all. Because there's always a mountain to block your view. Everywhere you see, there's always a mountain to block you. So probably all they have to do is just roll down a big stone and it would just block the entrance. Well, who knows, kill some like 15 people there and they just got a pile of bodies out there. But it never happened actually. The only time it was when the Spanish arrived, that they had the fighting here. Francisco Pizarro, the conquistador of Peru, hated this place so much because in the retaking of this fortress by the Spanish, one of his brothers, Juan Pizarro, was hit by a sling stone in one of the eyes, and 24 hours later he was dead. Because of that, Francisco Pizarro tried to destroy this place to the extent that he could, and have it covered in dirt. And after all these years, we're just uncovering the whole thing. And of course, most of these mortar stones have ended up in the construction of the churches in town. From here, you can see once again the hallmark of the Inca architecture, the trapezoidal shape. That's a nice picture over here. It has on like two portals in a row. It's really strange that the Central America people never relayed the message down here as to the Spanish. You know, I mean, like Central America was conquered by the Spanish some like 15 years before South America, before the Inca Empire. But somehow communication was cut off. As far as we know, 800 years before Christ, the Chavin culture in Peru and the Olmecs in Mexico, they had some communication. But over the years, somehow that communication was cut off. And then the Aztecs never relayed the message down to South America. So when the Spanish arrived in these lands, were caught equally unaware, like they had been caught by the Spanish in Central America. One just kind of wonders what would have happened if the Incas had known about the Spanish coming down here. It would have been a longer fight, yeah, and probably wouldn't been able, somebody pointed out, that we would have been able to see some more finished buildings out here, and probably knew some more about this culture. But not now. It's totally, most of it was destroyed. And of course, I mean, like, at first the Spanish didn't care about recording any of the history of this place. And only afterwards, you had the priests, especially the priests, that started to record about these lands. And then most of that information is so varied and different that it's kind of hard to get any conclusions. But still, they're working with them. All the kids out here. This stone over here, this is another waka over here. It's another one of these spiritual places. And of course here you can see that a step-like carvings to its maximum. When it comes to a waka in a stone like here, you get all these moldings, vertical, horizontal, that are telling us that it's a place of worship. It's a kind of visual language that we don't totally understand, but the only thing we can conclude is that it was a place of worship. What's interesting about these wakas is that this is not the only instance of a waka in a compass. It's something like 12 miles all around Cusco. There's something like 340 of these wakas. And what's more interesting is that all of these wakas are along 40 straight imaginary lines that radiate from the Sun Temple in Cusco. You get the Sun Temple in Cusco like a central hub, and you get all these lines in all directions, and along all of these lines you get all these wakas. Up to a 30% the wakas come in a stone, like here, and they're carved like that. Up to a 60% the wakas are related to water sources, water springs, rivers, lakes. That's from the outside world. Oh, there's a hole between them. I thought this was smelling great. It's a kind of wood, aromatic kind of wood. Oh yeah, that's right. For the mystic people, all of these lines are lines of power, and they believe that each one of these wakas was a vortex of magnetism. These are similar to your weight lines in Europe. You can see that most of these places are not meant for a lot of people. And that's usually the case when it comes to Inca sacrificial places. Only the priest and the performers of the sacrifice were allowed to come into these places. The bulk of the people was always outside, waiting for the priest to tell them about the results of the sacrifice. In all these places, they sacrifice domestic animals. In the area of Cusco, mainly llamas and guinea pigs. Only in the case of the Sun Temple in Cusco, they would sacrifice human beings. That was the only place. And the only one that could allow a human sacrifice was the Inca emperor, the high priest, or some of the very high officials. If any lower rank governor propitiated human sacrifice, he was killed himself. Here in Peru, we don't sacrifice llamas anymore. Next door in Bolivia, they still sacrifice llamas. Here it's just guinea pigs and llamas. Oh, here is basically guinea pigs. But in Inca times, of course, they sacrifice llamas. And we know that they sacrifice llamas here because they found some bones down there. When it came to a llama sacrifice, it said that you would need something like 4 people to have the llama against the rock. The llama should be facing east, and the first thing that they would do is just cut the jugular artery on the neck, and then when the llama was half dead, then they would just open the chest of it and try to get the heart, the gullet, and the lungs entire and complete. If the lungs were still breathing when they were taken out, it was a good omen. If not, they would just take the lungs, inflate the lungs, and try to read the omen by interpreting the vein pattern out there. Right? Of course, we're talking about simple questions here, yes-no questions. So it's nothing complicated. And then, of course, they would just come out and tell the people about the results of the sacrifice inside. So that took place here. They're kind of on the edge out there. And still those knobs are sticking out there. Well, they worked on that side of the rock too. Most of the time, because of the cuttings that they did. You have seats like here, and they're popularly known as Inca thrones because they look like seats. But no, they were not used as thrones or seats. On the other hand, all of these flat spaces are very appropriate for all the offerings that they place on top of these rocks. Like usually they burn coca leaves, or they burn some offerings to these places, or they pour some chicha on the ground. That's how it works. Some kind of species of starfish. And you find all these figurines out of lead, all kinds of figures that represent animals, and especially crosses, Christian crosses there. And you got all kinds of sweets, you got biscuits, then you got coca leaves, you got lumps of cotton of different colors, lumps of wool of different colors, just in a whole. And of course they've been able to identify all of these places because the early Spanish writers would always write the names of all these huacas. So little by little, one by one, they've been able to identify all of these places because up to the present, all of these places still have their original catchments. And here we got something else that supports the idea of this place being a place of worship. You got that rock set on that platform out there. You can see that the platform was a little bit higher. If you look at the big rock in the back, you're going to be able to see traces of the smaller stones that were against it there. And if they had built a platform around a rock like this, it must have been because it was quite important. They say that the rock had the shape of a puma, a jumping puma over to that side. But then, of course, since it represented a pagan religion, it was totally defaced, and that's what
Where these niches are here, there would have been a trapezoidal column area where they could put the mummies during the ceremonies. So the priest would come out from down there. This rock was in the shape of a puma, and all the audience would be sitting here with the mummies behind. Now we seem to have a problem with the bus. People underneath the bus. Let's see what happens next. So yes, it looks like we've got a problem with the bus, and they're calling up another replacement. So when that gets here, I guess we'll be off. And down in the valley there, you can see Cusco, partially hidden by this temple. We'll walk back up the hill to where everybody's waiting.
These mountains, the Mecca of the Andes Mountains is Lake Titicaca. From times immemorial, Lake Titicaca has always considered sacred, just because the legend as to the creation of the people in these lands start in Lake Titicaca. It said that Viracocha, the creator of the world, emerged from Lake Titicaca and decided to create mankind. At first, he created this mankind out of a stone, these giants out of a stone. But this first mankind didn't follow his rules of conduct, so he destroyed them. Actually, he flooded them. It's a flood that all the cultures usually talk about, this deluge. Then afterwards, he decided to create mankind again. But this time, first he created the sun and the moon. And then after that, he took some clay from the earth and he modeled this new mankind. Vegetable market, we walk to the bakery in town. They usually make, on market days, they make these pasties that have got cheese, onion, and tomato in them. That's all each, right? And after the market, I'll let you go so you can see all these souvenirs all over the town. But then you're going to be able to see in the vegetable market these dehydrated potatoes. Still with dehydrated potatoes, the way it was done in ancient times. This freeze and dry technique.
what we do is we spread the potatoes out in the open, and since it's freezing early in the morning, next morning all the potatoes are frozen. You allow them to thaw, you squeeze the water out of the potatoes, you let them dry, you wash them and you let them dry. And then you get potatoes that can last forever. Every Sunday would be a market day. Now, because of the tourist influx, we get some like 3 market days a week. On Sundays, on Tuesdays, and on Thursdays, like today. That's always the same idea. People come down from the mountain, they get together, it's an excuse for socializing, and of course, I mean, for doing your buying on your
That's Pisac Market down in the centre of the town, in the valley. The coach is so wide there's no room for pedestrians on the side of the bus. It's made to measure.
Brilliant. So the bus is going to be somewhere around here, this area.
Ça, j'ai vu que tu filmes beaucoup, là.
Like here. Yeah, right, I'd say. I mean, especially this one, it tastes different. It's got a different taste. 400 varieties. And there's also this kind of here. It looks like an old type, but it's not. It's like it's fresh one. It looks like old right there. Yeah. Also, different type of grains. It's the usual kind, but you got a different. 400 types of varieties there. In Lima, they make a refreshment known as chicha morada out of this, but it's just to get the color out of it. Then they discard the maize.
Are they selling the spoon as well?
Yeah. There you got the corn. The preferred kind of maize that we got, that we want, is that creamy one. That's the one that everybody likes, and they make popcorn out of it. Then you got the other grains. You got our preferred typical dish is stuffed hot pepper. So you open it, get the seeds out of it. It's still hot. You just stuff it with meat, potatoes, and then you bite it up. You butter it. It's quite alright, but then you need a beer.
How do you eat the
You pop it. Yeah, you pop it. And you have it in as a cereal or just in soups. Looping seeds, edible looping seeds. We developed a kind that's edible.
See the spices
The
there.
skill is just mixing all these powders to get the right color. Especially because I mean sometimes you see something green out there, you mix it with water and it's a different color. You salt it and then you boil it again. It swells a little bit, but not that much. It tastes different. But after a while, I mean, you like it. Much like caviar. You're going to learn how to eat. That's how we got to taste. Labels that made here. And then on the on this side of here, you got all these potatoes. Different kinds of potatoes out here. No matter how much you boil them, they're still hard. So they add some crunchy taste to the food, to the soup. So you just slice them and you make soup out of it. Right? Of course, you got the other kinds. It's one kind, another kind, another kind, another kind. Right? Different. You gotta know exactly what the potatoes are used for. I got some professional music instruments here. All kinds. The little guitars there, the charangos, and the flutes and panpipes. Even the maracas that we saw there.
Yeah.
Just when they are properly tuned. They're plain bread out there, but then you're gonna have these pasties coming out in a minute. Hot, right? So you go hot. Homemade bread, cheese, onions, tomato. Right. All for a soul.
Is it safe to eat?
It is.
Completely.
Yeah. Just because it's coming out of, it's been heated, I mean, like. And then that's eucalyptus, that's the kind of wood that they use.
Madame, drink agua sin gas, Coca-Cola, también tenemos agua sin gas, drink. Agua sin gas, Coca-Cola, drink, tapices.
So if you got a cake, you just bring it here to be baked. Or you pork, you bring it here, you pork. The guinea pigs here, like, they pay us all. It's like a public oven. Actually, that's the idea, it's a public oven. Because they make bread differently. Oh, it's part of the sauce. It's what you call an empanada.
Drink agua sin gas.
You filmed the market, did you?